Hello and welcome to this episode of Beat Teacher Burnout. I'm so glad you're here to listen. I have a guest today, Michael, who's a deputy head. He's had an amazing journey to get to where he is in school at the moment, and he's going to share that in a minute. But his story is about him trying to prove himself and going through episodes of burnout. It's absolutely fascinating, and what he's learned from that. And I kind of wish that I had met Michael many years ago when I was learning about better habits and better mindsets, because maybe I wouldn't have burnt out myself. So thankfully for Michael, he learned along the journey and he does it differently. So welcome, Michael. It's great to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you, Rowena.
Do you want to tell people a summary of how you got, because it's a lovely story, how you got to where you are now?
I'll keep an eye on the clock and I'll try and do it in 2 minutes because there's a lot to tell. So basically, I grew up in a working class background in a northern town, Dewsbury, at that time, full of factories. Had an education that resulted in me getting a few O levels. I was top of the school in the boys, but in my school, I was the only person that got five O levels. So it shows you the level of education. So working class background, worked in the mill for a couple of years. Then I joined the Navy. I joined the Navy as a rating. And I was a meteorological observer, travel the world, had a great time. And then I had an experience, a religious conversion. And then from that, I was passionate about helping people, went into youth work, worked for a local church. Before that, I did 2 years in an outdoor pursuit centre, helping people with special needs. From the youth work, then I went to work across the whole of the county of Cornwall, developing teams to do school assemblies and occasionally RE lessons, but the teams from each town in Cornwall, St Ives, Penzance, Redruth, Bodmin, we would do assemblies, moral themes, and then go to the next town and the next town, etc. In that time, I did a little bit of TV presenting because a crew came into one of the schools and saw one of the assemblies and asked me to do some TV presenting. So I did that for 2 years as well, part-time. But then I was in my early 30s, I was married, child on the way, and it was time to earn some money, to be honest. So my wife said, you've got some skills, you could become a teacher. So I then did a degree in my mid-30s and then qualified as a teacher. And then within a year, I'm the head of humanities. This just happened to me. I obviously was full of enthusiasm, full of idealism still, even though I'm 40 years of age. And within a couple of years, head of humanities, and then within 3-4 years, new trust came in and promoted me to assistant head, senior management team. And it was a difficult job. We've got one failing school, one coasting school, brought together, merging the staff. And I'm in charge of teaching and learning, quality assurance, CPD, etc. So 7-8 years doing that. School achieved outstanding status, highest progress in Lincolnshire, and then moved on to a next school as deputy head, and I've been there for 7 years. Okay. Was that okay? Was that 2 minutes, slightly over? I think it was okay.
Perfect. So, Michael, in the intro, I said that, obviously you come over as very passionate and you say you love learning and you love teaching. What was your experience of burnout?
I think up to the point of coming into teaching, or up to the point of coming into senior management, there was no problem with burnout. I was an enthusiastic individual that put myself into anything that came my way, whether it's TV presenting or outdoor pursuits or whatever it was. And then I came into teaching and I didn't have a problem. I'd go into work at 7:30. I'd leave at 6. I'd get my work done. I'd prep my 22 lessons. I'd mark all my books, and I was an RE teacher at the time, so I was marking a lot of books. And I managed to do that in time. And still do. We went to the World Championships triathlon in 2010. So I was still doing lots and lots of other activities, married, 2 children. And it was only really when I became a senior leader that I lost control of my balanced life. And I was working for the first year close to 80 hours. And then for the second year, probably just under 70 hours a week. And so my experience was I was burning out on a regular basis. So I'd get to the holidays, you get to Easter holidays, and I really couldn't do anything for a week. I get to the summer holidays, similar. You're going to need 2 weeks to recover. And that's where I was at them first 2 years as a senior leader. And I've analysed all that. I've analysed what I did wrong largely, and they've analysed a lot of what I did right, to be honest. And I think in the last 7 years, I've taken them lessons and tried to put them into practice. So I get a balanced life, and also other people get a balanced life, because if I've not got a balanced life, I'm going to be putting expectations on other people that is probably not appropriate.
I love that. Okay, so everyone's going to be shouting at the screen here saying, okay, we want to know what have you found to do right and what did you do wrong? So maybe if we start with what you did, you know that you did wrong, that you've then adjusted to find your way of getting a balanced life, because that's what we want as teachers and leaders, isn't it, at the end of the day?
It is. And when I was a teacher teaching 21, 22 lessons a week, like I said, I got that all done in and I said to you earlier that I used to organise 6, 7, 8 trips, local trips. So I was doing lots of extracurricular as well. And I managed to do that from 7:30 till 6 every day, no problem. And some of the practices that I then went into, I wasn't doing then. But I began these poor practices. For example, in them 2, maybe 5 years as a senior leader, I would be up at 4 a.m. on a Saturday morning. I worked till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I would be working till midnight on a regular basis, thinking this was normal. Maybe I was trying to prove something to somebody, to be honest. But I would be sending emails at 4 a.m. and they were, from what I consider, quite important and strategic, and they would be making expectations of people. I was sending them at 4 a.m. I wasn't expecting people to reply at 4 a.m, but there's a subliminal message that's going out. This guy's working at 4. Maybe I should be working at 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, obviously, most people are thinking I'm absolutely crazy. But what about them individuals that don't think I'm crazy, that I'm setting an example for? I'm setting an example that this is the norm. So, after reflecting, a number of years in senior leadership team, we'd achieved outstanding, got great progress. I began to reflect and think, I'm not sure this is right. So now I do not ever say, I don't work at 4 a.m. for a start, and I don't work at midnight unless we've got Ofsted. But if I did work in the evening, or if I did get up early in the morning, I sometimes do, I would send the email that I'm going to send to that person to myself. And then when I get into work, I will send it to them. So I'm not giving this subliminal message that they need to do the same. And also, if other people do that where I work now, I will have a gentle word with them, to say, be careful that you're doing this. It's not wrong that you're working early in the morning or late at night, because that's your own working practices. That's fine, but be careful. So that's one difference in my practice now compared to in the past as a senior leader.
Yeah, I love that, because I think as senior leaders, we're setting a standard, aren't we? There's an expectation of, when do we do emails? How often do we do emails? And, I know some schools, the number of emails every day is just appalling. And actually, sending emails at 4 a.m. is not a good example, is it?
No, it's not. No, I think, I don't know. I've psychoanalyzed myself, but I was trying to prove something, wasn't I? I think to somebody that I was worthy of that position. I think, yeah.
Bless you. It's difficult, isn't it? Because, we've talked on this podcast before that, so often both leaders, teachers, they never feel good enough. I certainly never. I was good at my job. I was told regularly I was good at my job, but I never felt I knew enough. I never felt I did enough. I wasn't good enough. So all the time there's that pressure. I don't know where that comes from, to try and do more, to try and do better.
Yeah, maybe it's something from my working class background that you feel a little bit unworthy and you have to work harder than other people. I don't think I feel that so much anymore. I think I've looked at my experience and my successes and thought, I don't need to do that anymore. I have proved myself. I shouldn't have had to prove myself, but the evidence suggests that I don't need to do that, and I don't need to transfer that onto anybody else as well. It's quite ironic, because when I was a youth worker, I did a course for the county council back in Cornwall, and the phrase that was on the training course has stayed with me all my life, and it was starting from strengths. And so in my dealings with people, even in this stressful burnout time, my philosophy was always look at the person and start from their strength. and build on their strength. Don't build on their weakness. You might have to tackle their weakness at some point, but that's not the first place you go to. So, for example, trying to create a positive environment, we used to do learning walks that were staff on staff, but you could only report back the positive that you saw in the class to try and build that self-esteem up. So it's ironic that I had this philosophy and yet I was putting myself down. But there you go. Yeah. Human psychology.
Yeah, and it's so common. And I think ECTs, they're looking at, are they good enough? And they're thinking, oh my goodness, I've got all these observations and people saying all these things to them. And actually, it's really important as leaders, isn't it, that we remember to tell people where we see they have strengths. And even if you're on a team, I do a training for schools and we look at what are your own strengths that you value, but also what are the strengths of your team? And do they know that they're a strength? Because it's so exciting. If someone says to you, Michael, I really value this strength of yours, that's just very validating and empowering. And we don't do that enough, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. And I think when you give a negative to somebody, I've been in observations where there's been feedback given where there's 3, 4, 5 development points. And, if somebody gives me 5 development points, I've not heard the last 4. I'm hearing the first one and I'm devastated by the first one. So, it's limited power given the other 4. So I certainly, when I work with my senior colleagues, say, we give, even where we think there's a lot to improve, we pick the one thing that person did well. And if there isn't one thing, then there's something wrong with us for not seeing it. We see the one thing and we highlight that. We don't lie. We don't flatter. We genuinely believe that person achieved something there and we focus on that. And if we have to then say, oh, by the way, we need to work on this as well, we have to do that. Of course we do. But that's not the priority. The priority is building on the strength.
Yeah.
I think these things do help with a balanced life and a balanced staff. If you're treating people and you're seeing the positive in them, that really helps them. And vice versa, the staff are thinking the same of each other and their own pupils as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, Michael, have you got another thing that you did wrong that you could highlight to people?
I think that some of your listeners are thinking at this point, this guy, he's not been in the classroom for many, many years. I teach at least six. I know you think 6. It's crazy. I teach 21, but I think back to when I taught 21 lessons, 22 lessons, and I said to you that I did go home at 6. I didn't go home at 4. I went home at 6. So, teaching, you do have to put the work in. You probably are going to be having to do 45 hours a week. That's the reality. If you're not prepared to do that, it probably isn't the profession for you. It's probably not a vocation because it has to be a vocation. So how did I do that? I think when I look back, how did I manage to cram so much in? I was efficient. So I've always had a things to do book, and I've done it in different ways, but now I just write all the things I've got to do in my planning and I tick them off. I give you a secret as well. Sometimes when I've done a job that wasn't in my things to do book, I write it in my things to do book and then tick it off. It's a little bit of a trick, but I do it because it makes me feel better. I have a things to do book and I tick things off. And the other thing is, I think that I obviously was efficient when I taught so many lessons, and I limit the chats through the day with people. Now that is very important. When you go to work, you want camaraderie with your other colleagues. You've got to have that. But if you have too much of that, you're limiting the time that you can plan, prepare, and mark. And I was an RE teacher, so I marked hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books in the day when we used to mark. So I did do that. And I think I limited the conversations and chats, the social chats through the day. I'd go to the staff room, 15 minutes, have a chat, and then you'd obviously have chats around the school, but I'd be conscious, this is going on too long. I've got to get back and I've got to prep, especially at the end of the day. Lock yourself away and it's 2 hours of full on prep.
Yeah, that's so helpful. I read 2 things recently. One was saying that if you're in full concentration mode and your phone pings, and all your eyes do is just flit over to your phone and then back to your concentration. It actually can take up to 23 minutes for your brain to get into that
Yeah.
fully functioning state of high level concentration again. But the other thing is, teachers often say to me that they are so distracted at the end of the day, people popping
Yeah.
in and saying,
Yeah.
oh, how did the day go, what have you got, this, what about, but actually, things like the Pomodoro technique, where you set your alarm for 25 minutes and you put a thing on the door and you say, I'll be available at 4:30, but not before then,
Yeah.
because you are head down into that marking, because you can get it done so much faster without the distractions.
Yeah. I obviously, as a senior leader now, a lot of my day is distractions. People come in, and especially the role that I have now as a deputy is, I'm 56 years of age, so I'm seen as a person of wisdom, which is amazing because I've always been a person of like passion and drive. So I have lots of people that come and want a conversation. It's to do with work, but I'm interrupted a lot. And that's part of my job now. I think I have to deal with that and think that's okay. But there's sometimes when I have to do work and I need 2 hours. I won't stay in my office for that because it's impossible to stay in my office and not be distracted. I think I might take your tip though and if I put that on the door, I just feel that because of the role I've got, it would be not an offense to people, but it might be taken wrong. So the best thing for me to do is I'll go to another place in the school where I won't be distracted.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
people can't find you. I love that.
Yeah.
Now, before we finish, Michael, I know you've got something on autonomy that you just wanted to share.
Yeah. I think when we are working in any job, and I've worked in factories and I've worked on production lines, and the dehumanizing effect of working in such environments is amazing. And you'd think that you don't get that in teaching, but I think you do when you're following somebody else's scheme of work, or as a senior leader, you're following exactly what Ofsted want you to achieve. You can have the same effect. You can have that dehumanizing effect, and you have no autonomy, or you feel you don't have any autonomy. I was speaking to a middle leader the other day who said just that, who said, we just have to do what we're told to do. And I get that. Probably me more than most now in my role. However, I think that it's very important to have some level of autonomy in your profession, in your career. So, for example, when I taught 21 lessons a week, I wrote my own scheme of work. So it's slightly different for me. But if somebody else had imposed that on me, I would have interjected and done what they wanted, but I would always put in some fun element that I've created in my lesson. So it's my, I'm owning that particular thing for that lesson. And I think that's probably more important now because there is a system in the country where we are encouraged by Ofsted and by some of the super academies to have these really formatted lessons where we've got the PowerPoints to an inch of a person's life. So I think having autonomy in your teaching to some degree is really important. I found that as a senior leader, I was in charge of quality assurance, teach and learning, and effectively this is what we've got to do. But I introduced things like, the positive learning walks. It wasn't, nobody else came up with that idea. Nobody was doing it at the time, but it was something that I could own. And I knew that was mine. And I think that's really important. So you end up to some degree loving your job because that's important. Should we 100% love our jobs? We could try and we might not achieve it, but we need to have a high percentage of enjoying what we do, I think.
Oh, yeah. I absolutely resonate with that. And my story of that was as a deputy, we were very short of teaching assistants, and the government had some new policy thing where they had apprenticeship programs, and I went after training up some teaching assistants using that program, and I was already completely snowed under with work, and people were saying, Rowena, don't take this on, it's a whole nother thing that you've got to do. But it made me absolutely buzz and thrive because it was my thing, and I was being creative and making it work, and it was exciting and fun, and I just loved developing these young people. And actually it did give me more workload, but because it was something that it was my challenge, it was my idea, it had a completely different impact on me. Yeah, you're right. Well, Michael, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's an amazing story of really the determination and the creativity of, a young person who scrapes their five O levels, as it was then, and turns out to be a deputy head. And that's just an amazing story of success and against the odds, really, what might have been expected of you. So it's fantastic. And I think the kids who you've inspired are really lucky, because for teachers to say, I just want to bring joy and fun into a lesson,
Yeah,
that's nothing better, is there, really?
that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I love that.
And I
Now,
think,
if people
yeah,
would,
go.
sorry, go on.
No, I just think that, it's a difficult profession that we're in. There's lots of challenges, but yeah, you've got to, it's got to be a vocation. You've got to enjoy it. So you've got to bring that element within your profession as much as you can.
Definitely. So, Michael, if people want to find you, what's the best place for them to get in contact with you?
Well, I'm on Facebook. I'm on probably LinkedIn is best. I think on LinkedIn I'm down as it's Michael brackets Mick Oliver. But I'll give you my email as well, my personal email. People can contact me on.
Okay. Well, I'll put it in the blurb in the podcast. Okay, and then people can find you if they want to have some ideas how to bring fun into their lessons. I love that. So thank you so much, Michael, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you took something of value from today. If you want to connect, I'm at rowenahicks.com, or I have a Facebook group, which is Preventing Teacher Burnout. So I look forward to connecting to you at one of those.